As the grandson of one of the wealthiest men in the world, John Paul Getty III was kidnapped by the Ndrangheta and held for a $17 million ransom while he was living in Rome in 1973. He spent several months being tortured and harassed by his captors until negotiations began to pay for the kidnappers. Welcome to another Cracked Crime Facts video. At 3 a.m. on July 10, 1973, 16-year-old John Paul Getty III was abducted by an Italian criminal gang called the Ndrangheta while visiting the famous Leaning Tower of Pisa in Rome. The Ndrangheta organization, which had a mafia-like structure, had kidnapped many people in northern Italy during those years to get money. At the time, they thought they had found an easy target that was worth a treasure. In fact, John Paul Getty III was no ordinary teenager. He inherited the vast wealth of the Getty family and belonged to one of the world's most famous and wealthy families. The family's fortune skyrocketed in the early 1950s when John Paul Getty the Great, the grandfather of John Paul Getty III, founded the Getty Oil Company, the largest oil company of its kind in the United States at that time. Through this company, John Paul Getty the Great became the richest man of the era. Because of all of these reasons, John Paul Getty III was considered a perfect victim for kidnappers. John Paul Getty's first wife's son, Jill Harris, was a water polo champion and had a son named John Paul Getty III. From an early age, Getty III was a source of embarrassment to his family. He was expelled from English boarding schools several times, one time for painting the school hallway, inspired by media reports about the Manson family. By the time he was 15, Getty III had almost a gypsy lifestyle. He attended leftist gatherings, nightclubs, and indulged in alcohol and drug abuse. He made a living by selling works of art and jewelry he produced. Getty III was arrested once for throwing a Molotov cocktail during a left-wing rally that caused extensive damage to cars and motorcycles. It was around this time that Getty III was abducted by the Ndrangheta. Just 2 days after his disappearance, Getty III's mother received a call in which the kidnappers demanded $17 million in cash in exchange for her son's safe return. When Getty's mother announced that she had been separated from her wealthy husband for more than 9 years and could not afford to pay such money, the kidnappers told her to bring it from London. This sentence was, in fact, a reference to her ex-father-in-law, who lived in London at the time and could afford to pay such a sum. They also sent her a handwritten note from Getty III. "My dear mother, I have been in the hands of the kidnappers since Monday. Don't let them kill me." Quickly, many family members and police officers began to question the kidnapping plan, because Getty III had joked many times that he will one day plan out his kidnapping to get some money out of his stingy grandfather. But as time went on and the kidnappers' demands continued, Getty III's father realized the reality and the deteriorating situation. Thus, when he could not afford the $17 million, he called his father and asked him for help. "I have 14 other grandchildren, and if I pay a penny now, I will face 14 abducted grandchildren," said 80-year-old Getty in response to media allegations of his son's request. Throughout the negotiations between the Getty III family and his abductors, teenage Getty was chained to a pole in a cave in the Calabria Mountains and regularly tortured. In November of that year, 4 months after the abduction, the kidnappers decided to show their seriousness. They cut off one of Getty's ears and sent it to a local newspaper with a piece of hair and a caption. "This is Paul's ear. The other ear will arrive if we do not receive the money within the next 10 days. In other words, he will reach you in pieces." After this incident, the great Getty softened and decided to pay the requested money to the kidnappers. However, his nature did not prevent him from bargaining with the kidnappers. He eventually released his grandson for less than $3 million. More interestingly, he pledged his grandson a 4% interest to return this amount after his release. Getty III, who spent his 17-year-old birthday in captivity in a cave, was found on a snow-covered road between Rome and Naples on December 15, 1973, shortly after paying the kidnappers. His amputated ear was recovered during several surgeries. Eventually, 9 kidnappers, including senior members of the Ndrangheta organization, were arrested. However, they managed to escape justice as only 2 of their subordinates were brought to justice in the case of the abduction of Getty III. The kidnapping had a devastating effect on Getty III, which played a crucial role in his later addiction to alcohol and drugs, which ruined his life. In 1981, at the age of 25, After consuming a combination of drugs and alcohol, he suffered from a liver failure and heart attack, which resulted in paralysis of the arms and legs and the loss of his vision. John Paul Getty III never recovered and remained disabled for the rest of his life. He spent the rest of his tragic life in a house in Beverly Hills, which was converted into a well-equipped private hospital using his grandfather's wealth. John Paul Getty III passed away in 2011 at the age of 54 from heart disease. Despite his wealth, his life was forever overshadowed by his abduction and his family's incredible and painful indifference to it. Thank you for watching, and until next time.